Hello, this is Nick, the Dark Yogi, and welcome to Kisma and the Dark Yogi, brought to you by SourceMovement.com. We're here for people who want to be radically authentic and courageously vulnerable. So whether you're a yoga teacher, an entrepreneur, or a leader building a tribe, we're here to get your energy and your mindset positioned for success. No more stress, no more lack of energy. It's time to lead with your full potential. Our intention is to leave the world a better place than we found it and inspire you to do the same. So hey, if this message in our podcast resonates with you and you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to Kisma and the Dark Yogi on iTunes. While you're there, give us a rating, let us know what you think, and if you have somebody in your life that would enjoy this conversation, please go ahead and share it with them as well. If you want more information about the movement, all you have to do is go to sourcemovement.com. But for now, let's get the show started. I hope you enjoy this episode of Kisma and the Dark Yogi.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. Super happy that you're here. We have something really special we want to share with you. And many of you will understand this immediately. And some of you will be like, what? What are you talking about? And it's really, when I sent a notice out about this session, I said, we're going to talk about why everyone else around us thinks we're an alien. And I know that for some of you, you're like, yes, this is true, and especially as we evolve in our spiritual practice, our yoga practice, expanding our consciousness, whatever that is, people around will start to look like, what is happening, right? You're different. And what can also happen is that it will scare them. There's two pieces to that. Number one, you are becoming less affected by the world. When you are less affected by the world, you actually rise up, your frequency ascends, and you accrete more light, right? That's part of the whole practice. You'll accrete more light and you will be shinier and brighter. When you're shinier, when you have more light, other people look at you and it's like they're kind of freaked out that you're getting it together and you're just not affected by their drama and their trauma. And also they're looking at you, and because you're light and bright, their stuff is getting thrown right back. So oftentimes there's a couple scenarios. You'll actually offend people and you will have no reason, you'll have no understanding why. Or you just can't really engage in a conversation. It doesn't resonate and it doesn't inspire you. So the conversations in the mundane world become fewer and fewer in your life. So therefore, some of the people around you, you'll talk to less. And then there's a third thing that can happen, which I'm going to start to talk to the Dark Yogi, Nick, here about, because he had a very amazing experience last week where he did an immersion training with one of his teachers, Siobhan, and it was very, very high level energetic mastery training. And I'm sure that all of you, if you've been on a retreat with us or you've been in a training and you leave and there's something about you where people are like, what? Or you just feel like you've shifted, which you have. You're a different human. So I'm going to start out by just, welcoming the Dark Yogi right here and now.
Hello, welcome.
And I'll reference it all. I'll start with what happened for me. He came back from this training on Friday. It was his birthday. So a bunch of us went out for dinner and that was really nice. And then Saturday was like a down day, which one often needs when you're doing this kind of work. Sunday, I was out at an event all day, 10 hours, and he had a very specific checklist of things to do. And then I came home and he was just kind of like sitting on the sofa. And I'm like, what's going on? And basically he was like on another plane in a different dimension. So I knew enough to like not be pissed or angry, but I was like, what really happened here today? I've been gone for 10 hours, like you got number 1, 2, and 3 on the list out of 10 done. So I'm just going to turn it over to Nick so he can talk a bit about that feeling within.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's important to look at it from both perspectives. And I can totally understand it from your perspective. For me...
Wait, really? Do we have to see both perspectives? Isn't mine the right one?
Yeah, yours is always the right one. For me, it was like that whole week, we tallied it up. It was at least like 50 hours of intensive training and like a real deep dive into, really and truly like some of your deepest and darkest, just not in like the crazy drama kind of way. Like we were working through this systematic process to unfold and untangle some of, the deepest things that hold us back and to learn how to work with that, with ourselves and with others. So it was super intensive training. And when you're in that kind of environment, I think, all of us can kind of imagine, or you've probably had that experience if you've ever been on any kind of a yoga retreat to some degree or another. It's like time starts to bend. You're in kind of a different sort of reality and a different sort of thing, right? So I've done it enough times to know coming out of it, what to expect. And this one was probably one of the most intensive trainings I've ever done. And so it's like you're just kind of in a different zone for it. Mm-hmm. And I can say this was one for me that really there was a shift that happened where it's like I woke up one day and I looked at myself in the mirror. I was like, I recognize you. And at the same time, I felt and feel entirely different in my life and in myself, in my body, and my being, and the way that I show up and the way I'm present with people. So it's a really, really different experience, right? And so I think the interesting thing about that is that both of us have done this enough times that she knew when to expect that, but she, so she was patient enough with me. But I think when we step outside of that, especially if you're newer to this and that kind of thing, or the changes are just happening more gradually over a period of time, not due to a really like intensive experience like that, it's like people just start to kind of notice and get a little weird around you. And I noticed this in my own life, really in the more gradual sense, when I first started to get really into yoga and different aspects of, my own personal growth and development and really taking ownership for that. And I noticed just that really it was harder for me to be around some of the things that I had been around before, some of the conversations that I had been around and some of the people that I had been around, family, friends, coworkers, the whole 9 yards. It's like all of a sudden what used to be so normal to me and even like pleasant became distasteful. Mm. So I think for me, the most important part that anybody going through that experience, the number one thing is to really just recognize that there's nothing wrong with them. And you've simply changed and shifted your perspective.
Yeah, that was something that was coming up for me when you were talking, because what can easily happen, even when we're doing ascension work, right? Expanded consciousness work, is we're still human. So we can judge the others. It's like, oh, why would they do that? That's so stupid. That doesn't make sense. The moment we judge others, we do fracture our soul energy. This is something, if you learn nothing else from any of this, it's that the moment that you judge, you fracture your soul energy. We need to constantly assess, right? We know the intellect. We have this intellect. We need to always assess. But when we judge, it diminishes the very work that we are all here to do, really.
Yeah, and that's really the big piece is, we get into a judgmental place because like I've had this awakening and I feel so good and I see the world differently and you should too. And like who are you? Like who are we to make that kind of judgment? It's not really your place. You can see it and have whatever perspective you want, but at the end of the day, that person's just being who they are. So it comes back to those fundamentals of how we relate to the other, and really approaching it from the standpoint of acceptance and love and appreciation for who that person is in that particular moment. And that's just who they are. And it's really not your business. Your business is to recognize who you are and to bring forth your best.
Right. Because as we know, the only person we can work on is ourself. And by doing that, we inspire and we help the people around us to ascend. They will just do that naturally, or they won't if they choose not to. So importantly with the other people is that presence of divine omni-love, right? You're coming from an all-loving space. You have compassion and you notice and you assess and you understand who that person is. They may change, they may not, but right now that's who they are. And you taking care of you will be actually their fastest path to ascending, because they're watching you, they're feeling you, they'll start to be intrigued. And just most of us know, right? If anybody out there has kids, you know that the moment, or if you remember when your parents did this, the moment someone starts telling you to do something, you're like, no, I'm out. So it's important not to be telling people, do this, but simply to live it. That's the best you can do for you, for the people around you, and for the planet.
Yeah, totally. And when you come back, like, this is a really interesting component of it, especially if it's related to spiritual growth, is if you come back and you're judgmental towards people for not being where you think they're supposed to be, it's like, what did you do?
Right,
like,
right.
You should probably go back or go do something different.
Yeah, and I have to say, Nick, he was a great example of that, because I was like, so tell me again, like, what did you do today? And I was like, did you watch Game of Thrones? Like, did you go on a bender? And he's like, no. And he didn't get mad at me. This was when I knew it was like, wow, this is awesome, because he wasn't getting mad at me because I was questioning, like, well, what the heck did you get done today? And finally I was like, okay, it's all good. He needed the day to process and reboot. And then he kicked it off Monday like a storm.
Yeah. And that's like, you bring up another really good point there. And I think that's another thing where people go through an experience like that, and then they give themselves, I think rightfully, a little space to process. I do believe that that's an important component. However,
train of truth.
This truth bombs coming.
We just want you to know the train is now a character in our calls.
It is that
sort of like Mr. Rogers.
That meant that truth is coming.
Truth is coming.
And here's the truth: is that when you come back and give yourself a little bit of space, right? That does not mean stop.
Yes.
So
great.
All of that, I could go there and do like 50 hours. I could do 100 hours in a week of that intensive kind of work. And if I come back and then just don't do anything and just lay around and be like, I'm processing, and don't do anything, none of that's going to integrate.
Right.
And it's not all going to be lost, but a vast, vast majority of that is going to be lost. You must have the action. And so Sunday, to her eyes, may have seemed like, dude, like, what are you doing? But to me, it was like, well, time's definitely moving a little different for me. And I'm moving at a different place, but that was me staying in it at my pace and like taking whatever action that I could. And it definitely wasn't what I had planned on. But at the end of the day, something happened, and lo and behold, come around Monday, the very next day, it was like, bam, back in and really, and still being able to keep what I had taken with me from the experience, which I think is the most powerful part.
Yeah. And that brings it brings something up for me. There's many people, and again, I'm just going to go with assessment. So don't misinterpret this that I'm judging people, but it's our job when we work with clients or we're interviewing people, we need to assess. There's many people that will become addicted to doing the types of events, processes, whatever that make them feel good. There's nothing wrong with feeling good. Look, most of us are looking to change our state, to change out of anxiety, to change out of stress, to change out of fear. We want peace, we want contentment, we want focus, and that we should have. But when we get addicted to simply feeling that way and processing it and not integrating it, not implementing, we have no value and we certainly have no wisdom. So I want you to really understand this, because it's like, I know I've talked to a few people, coaches struggling with their businesses, and they're off to do the next thing that makes them feel good. The big rah, like lift them up. But when that event is over or that conference is over, they're not implementing. So they've not acquired the wisdom that they need to really shift and build their business. So this is for all of us. It's great to feel good. Emotions are a beautiful thing, but the integration and what happens when we start to integrate, sometimes it's uncomfortable, right? Sometimes it's that, I can tell you, I had a project this week, and for 48 hours, it was like I had to breathe through every next step. It was like I was up against a brick wall, and I just had to keep going and going and going. And then magically, Nick did some of his process, the wavy hand stuff that he learned last week, and it all broke, and I shifted, and it was a great feeling. So we have to stay in it, and we have to keep the momentum going.
Yeah, that's like action is key, right? All the great like spiritual growth and metaphysical stuff is all really wonderful, but if you're not bringing it in through your being and through your actions, it's not integrating, and there's no value there, right? So you're actually not getting the value of whatever it was that you invested in. Now, the other piece that I think is really incredible, you talked about being addicted to like the peaceful feeling or the release, but also I noticed that a lot of people get addicted to the drama of those kinds of things. Like they want to go through and it's like this big intensive experience and I'm going to break through, and then I did, and then you feel good, and it's like, it's just addicted to the drama cycle.
And then it's over, and there's not an integration.
Yeah, exactly, right? Mm-hmm. And then you're back at the same.
Mm-hmm. And I can tell you what's really, really important. If you find that you are doing those kinds of processes, the breaking the boards, walking on the coals, whatever it is, and it feels good and you think you had a breakthrough, but nothing shifts in your life, there was no fucking breakthrough. It didn't happen. You felt good, but there was not a resolution. We've got to resolve these things that get in our way and hold us back.
Yeah. It has to be a constant state of resolution.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to put it. And that's the best word, I think, that makes sense, is like resolving. We have all of these unresolved things, right? That goes back eons into our soul's record. And ultimately, you're seeing all of the results of that in your everyday experiences. And so when there are things that are off and things that you would like to change, or, whether it's within your state of being or whether it's what you actually have in your life as far as money or relationships or work or career or spirituality or health or whatever it is, when those things are not showing up in the way that you really want, something's out of integrity and something's out of alignment, and something needs to be resolved in order to help take you to the next level. Mm-hmm. So yes, there is the aspect of be happy with where you are. Life is freaking amazing. But don't use that as an excuse to stop, sit, and do nothing and just bliss out, because you're here to do something really important. You have something that you came to do, and let's get on with it, because likely that work is going to affect more lives than you could imagine. So when you make it all about you and blissing out and just being happy, it's actually probably one of the most selfish things that you could do.
Yeah. So I had an idea. I wanted to offer up, because not all of us are running off to 5-day, 10-hour energetic events. We're in our world. So I wanted to offer up a structure so that everyone could create their own energy mastery. It will start, and these are just suggestions. So if they resonate with you, great, run with them. If they don't, stop and think, what does work for you? And for me, and from the greatest of our teachers, all of our teachers, it's always been about, what do we do first thing in the morning? Because as you know, spirituality is really energy. So I'm not here to say, believe this, or this. You believe what you believe. But to be able to ascend, accrete more light, expand our consciousness, it's really about having time. Like Nick just said, you've got a purpose here. But sometimes it takes a while to really have an awareness of where you are now in order to know where you're supposed to go. So first thing in the morning, drink a glass of really good water. Put your hand on your heart and tell yourself, this will be an awesome day. And then As you know, we always suggest reading something. Maybe it's just 15 minutes, maybe it's 30 minutes, but read text that we're always big on Swami Parthasarathy's books, Follow the Human Intellect, Governing Business and Relationships, Vedanta Treatise. You might have something else. And then some of you will either sit quietly, you might call this meditation, we call it reflection, or you might journal. Do something. You've got to allot that time. And if it means you're getting up a half hour earlier, do it, because this is what will save your soul, honestly. And it will set you on a path of not just feeling better, but being able to integrate it, to live it, and to have the true wisdom.
Yeah, that's huge, is to make a ritual of that, a practice of that. Moving your body is one very small part.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful because what does it do? It basically activates everything. But at the end of the day, if there's not some process of cleaning out old patterns, followed by some process of infusing yourself with the higher and making sure that you have the mechanism to stay connected to that, to your higher self, your full potential self, then ultimately it's just going to be kind of a spinning type of practice, right? So those things in place, really, really important.
Yep. Great.
Yeah. So I think that'll do it for this topic.
Yeah. Look forward to your ascension. I want to hear about how everyone's going to ascend.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I like it.
All righty.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap us up for today. We want to thank you for joining us on the call and on the show. And, go ahead and subscribe to our podcast if you're not already. Kizma and the Dark Yogi in iTunes. We're in Stitcher. We're on SoundCloud. Give us a rating and a review. Let us know what you think. And beyond that, we are just wishing you the very best and a very heartfelt namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Kizma and the Dark Yogi. We hope that you enjoyed it. If you've got somebody in your life that you think would really like this show, go ahead and share it with them. You can find us on iTunes. You can find us on Stitcher and SoundCloud as well. Look for Kizma and the Dark Yogi. We'd love to hear from you, so please give us a rating and a review. That would really help us in getting the message out there, and we'd greatly appreciate it. If you have questions or would like to hear us talk about something on the show, please drop us a line at podcast@sourcemovement.com. That's podcast@sourcemovement.com. Until the next time, namaste.